But what I like the most is that debate was happening. And that's the debate I thought we were going to have for 2 years. And instead, the Democrats shot their load on March 6th, 2 months into the new Congress. And this is already over.
I am so damn tired of being lied to. I don't think I can deny it anymore. You can't stick to your story if you think it flies. But I'm not gonna buy it anymore.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the 192nd episode of Congressional Dish. I am a literally sick and tired version of your host, Jennifer Briney. As you can probably tell already from my voice, I am not a healthy girl right now, but I need to get this episode out of my life. And so I'm recording it now, even though I am not my best self, because as you can probably already tell, this is not an airing of the live show that I did at Podfest. I was there. I did it. I got up on the stage, but the hotel staff wanted to get home. And so they waved me off and made me get off stage halfway through my episode, which it had nothing to do with the Podfest organizers. They had told the people that I was allowed to go as long as I needed. And the only reason I ran out of time is that there were tech difficulties. So I started, I think, 20 minutes late. So it was not my staff that did it. It was not the Podfest organizers. They were wonderful. In fact, this was the best Podfest I've been to so far. This was my third one, and it just keeps getting better every year. So thank you, John Dennis and Chris Kermitzos, for letting me experiment with a live show format for Congressional Dish. At this point, I don't know if there's going to be another one. That might just be my fever talking, but it didn't go well. And honestly, the little bits of it that I did like, I can't even use because there was this buzzing sound that was just too annoying in the recording. So the tech difficulties just fucked up the entire thing. And so I'm going to tell you what happened, but that's the thing. It wasn't just the tech difficulties that screwed it up. It was Congress. It was Congress, because the entire reason that I was doing this particular episode is because I made the mistake of having hope, and Congress took my hope away, specifically the Democratic Party. And I should have known. I should have known after 6 years of following Congress as closely as I have. And after the festival of disappointments that was the Obama administration, for me to start this Congress with any hope whatsoever was so fucking stupid. And that's what I'm mad at myself for. Because the reason that I chose this particular topic, this episode is and always was supposed to be about H.R. 1. And H.R. 1 was introduced on the first day of the Congress, and the bill number is significant because there are thousands, literally thousands of bills that are introduced in every single Congress. And that's what the bill number means. So H.R. 1 means that this was number one for the Democrats when they took over the House of Representatives. And so the very first weekend that we had this year after this was available, I read the whole bill. And it helped because I was super sick at the time, so I had nothing better to do. But I read a 600-page bill with a 103-degree fever because I'm insane. But anyway, I sat down and I read the bill, and I couldn't believe it. I liked it. For the most part, there were some things in it that I didn't like, but I liked it. There are some very major problems that we have in this country. For instance, we have politicians who are creating their own districts. It's called gerrymandering, and it is a very common practice. And one of the things that H.R. 1 would do is it would make it a nationwide standard that districts would be drawn by independent commissions instead of politicians who win state houses. It's a good idea. I liked it. Another thing that H.R. 1 would do if it were to become law was give us all automatic voter registration. Because one of the things that has never made sense to me as an American who pays taxes is that every single year I have to pay thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to the federal government. And I know that if I don't, the IRS will hunt me down like a dog and throw me in a cage. So they know where I live. And so it doesn't make sense to me that when we go to vote, we have to register as if the government doesn't know where we are. And so this would bring us onto a path where all of us taxpayers all over the country would be automatically registered when we communicate with the government, if we want to be. It would also allow us to opt out if we wanted to opt out. And I don't know why you would, but you would have that option. So it would take us on a path towards automatic voter registration, which would get rid of all these voter purge shenanigans that have been going on. And let's see, what else does this bill do? Oh, ethics and lobbying reform. So it would have some measures that would not stop, but like slow down the revolving door. So for instance, like government contractors, which are people that hand out the contracts, which are big buckets of taxpayer money to companies. Well, you wouldn't be allowed to be a government contractor one day, give a company a giant contract, and then immediately go and work for that company. That would be illegal. You wouldn't be able to be paid at all by that company for 2 years. So it's stuff like that. I read this bill and I liked it. And there were some things I didn't like they do a campaign finance system in this bill that is still based on raising money. And I'll give you more details on that in a second. But I read the whole thing and I outlined the whole thing and I was like, God, this is going to be so great. But the reason that I had hope is that on January 3rd, when they introduced this bill, they sent it to 10 committees. And the reality of the situation is that this was being done by the Democrats. And a lot of the things that are in here, like making it illegal to purge voters within 6 months of an elections from the voter rolls and making voter caging no longer a thing, which is when some group sends crap to you in the mail. And if you don't return it to that group then challenges your voter registration by saying, well, they didn't pick up their mail, so they don't live there anymore. And then you lose your right to vote on election day because you're no longer on the registration list. That's called voter caging. That would become illegal in HR 1. Well, these are methods that are employed by the Republican Party. Let's not mince words here. And so they were never going to sign this into law. In fact, here is Mitch McConnell, he's the head of the Republican Party in the Senate, so he gets to decide what bills come up for a vote. Here he is talking about H.R. 1.
And I want to assure the American people right from the outset, it may pass the House, but not the Senate.
So he said that in January. We've known from the very beginning that this wasn't going to pass the Senate. And even if it did, here's an example of one of the things that's in it that's going to make it impossible for Trump to sign. Oh, and by the way, this is Representative Elijah Cummings. He is talking in the House Committee on Oversight and Reform on February 6th.
Title 8 also would make clear that Congress expects the president to divest his business holdings, just as every single president since Jimmy Carter has done, and place them in an independent and truly blind trust.
Does anyone think that Donald Trump is going to sign a law that makes him separate himself from the Trump organization? Because we've been operating for a long time on the honor system with the idea that someone that could possibly win the presidency would be an honorable person. And this whole Donald Trump experiment we're running here is just kind of proving that we need laws. But Donald Trump is not the person that's going to sign this. So we knew from the very beginning it was dead on arrival. But I still liked this law and I liked the strategy I thought was coming, because on January 3rd, the Democrats referred it to 10 committees, which told me that they were in this for the long haul. And here's the thing I liked about the strategy. I loved the idea of forcing the debate during this, what's definitely going to be a polarizing Congress. I mean, the House and the Senate being controlled by two different parties is going to make it tough to pass just about any laws. So if we're going to have a Congress that does damn near nothing, make this the conversation. Let's talk about gerrymandering. Let's talk about voter registration and how stupid that idea even is that we have to register while we are all paying taxes. Let's make this the conversation. Let's talk about the lack of laws that are enforced upon Congress and the presidency, making sure that they are not corrupt as Like, I loved the strategy. Let's talk about this for 1 to 2 years. Loved it. And when it went to 10 committees, that told me that there were going to be 10 committees having hearings on it. And there would be 10 committees that it had to pass through and that they were going to work on this and make it an amazing bill. And then maybe if we got a better Congress next time, this bill, which would have been worked on for 2 years, would be sitting there waiting, just about done. And then we could pass it. That was the hope I had. That was the strategy I thought was coming. Well, so I put together a whole episode, right? I read the bill, I go down every line because what I wanted to do was introduce this to you guys. I wanted you to understand HR 1 from the very beginning and understand what this bill started as so that we could track it for the next 2 years, so that we could follow this one bill until it gets its vote in the House. I thought it was going to take at least 1 year, maybe 2. So I'm at Podfest and I have my outline done. My show it's done, right? And on Wednesday morning, I'm performing my show on Friday afternoon. On Wednesday morning, I'd just gone for a run. I went back to my room and I turned on C-SPAN just to have on in the background because it's what I do. So I turn on C-SPAN and I find out that the House of Representatives is debating H.R. 1. They're debating H.R. 1. Now, I watched the hearings. There were only, there were two that I saw that had witnesses. There was one in the House Judiciary Committee and one in the Oversight and Government Reform Committee. So I have clips from both of those in my lineup for this episode. And I know that it passed through the House Administration Committee, which I didn't even know was a thing. It's such a small, irrelevant committee, but it passed through that. And now it's on the House floor for a vote. And the thing is, this is how the Republicans were spinning that. This is Representative Scott Perry. Here he is talking on Wednesday, March 6th in the House of Representatives. He's a Republican from Pennsylvania.
And I just want to remind everybody that this bill was given jurisdiction in 10 committees. But one committee marked it up. One committee took a look at it and said, well, this is wrong. Let's fix this. Let's change that. One committee with 9 people, 2%. 2% of Congress have been involved in this bill.
And he's right. So it only made through one committee out of the 9 that were supposed to deal with this. And the 9 that were supposed to make sure that there was nothing being slipped into law, whether on purpose or accidentally. I didn't see anything that was like, ooh, this can't become law. But at the same time, like one word can have huge consequences. So I thought this was going to be carefully crafted. 9 of the committees didn't even touch the actual bill and make any amendments. It was just this teeny tiny little committee. It took them 5 hours to go over 600 pages. Come on. And there were parts of the bill that they didn't even have jurisdiction. So like there are certain committees that can only touch certain topics. The House Administration Committee wasn't able to adjust anything in the entire bill. Or anything they wanted in the entire bill. But then when it comes to the Democrats, how do they justify moving this through so quickly? Which they did. I mean, everything Scott Perry just said is accurate. This is an accurate accusation that the Republicans can make against the Democrats right now. Well, here's how they defend themselves. Here's Representative Jamie Raskin of Maryland's 8th District. He's a Democrat. This is also on the House floor on Wednesday, March 6th.
Let's compare their H.R. 1 when they got started with our H.R. 1. Well, theirs was filed, marked up, and passed in 2 weeks with no hearings, no amendments made in order, and no expert testimony at all. Our H.R. 1 was filed on the first day of the new Congress for all of the public to read. There have been hearings in 5 different committees with over 15 hours of expert testimony, culminating in a full committee markup in House administration. 60 days later, we're now on the floor for consideration in an open and transparent way. So you think they would have the decency not to raise the question of process after running the House of Representatives like King Kong over the last 2 years, but the people who ran it like King Kong now want to turn it into a Quaker meeting house. Somehow, they should be thanking us for the openness of our proceedings.
You know, that is so frustrating because we all watched the 115th Congress together on this show, or listened to it since this is a podcast. But we know that the accusation that the way the Republicans ran the House of Representatives is true, that it was horrendous. It was awful. But this argument that they're making, that like, well, yeah, this went pretty fast, but the Republicans were worse. That's like shooting 50 people and saying, well, that's fine because 9/11 happened. Like, no, if you're going to be better, Democratic Party, you have to actually be better. So having they said they had hearings in 5 committees. I don't know what they're talking about. I only witnessed 2. I mean, maybe if I dig through the Daily Digest, I'll find more, but I only witnessed 2 hearings. But 15 hours on a 600-page bill that touches on so many topics, it's not enough. It's not enough. And what makes it worse, so I told you that Wednesday is when I find this out. And so I'm sitting there in a towel going, you've got to be fucking kidding me. You're going to vote on it this week? Well, what they did between Wednesday and Friday when they actually voted is they worked on 72 amendments. 72! And then they voted on it immediately. So to say that the American public had plenty of time to read the thing, shut up. No, we didn't. You don't get to amend it 72 times, and I don't know how many of those passed. I have no idea. But 72 amendments, and then they immediately vote on it. That doesn't give us time to understand the changes that were made. I'm so disappointed in what happened. And so this happened while I'm at Podfest. And so this happened on Wednesday. I was completely thrown off guard. I obviously had to put this in the episode. I spent all day Thursday in my room watching the debate, grabbing clips, and then they voted on Friday morning. H.R. 1 passed with every Democrat voting yes and every Republican voting no. It passed at 11:16 a.m. and I was on stage at 5 talking about this thing. And I don't know, you guys, it was, and then of course, like that was a disaster. And so I'm just, as you can hear, I'm just so out of sorts. And what I'm really disappointed in is myself. I shouldn't have had hope. I shouldn't have had hope, you guys. I just feel real stupid here. I feel stupid on a lot of levels here. But yeah, so H.R. 1, it already passed. And so here I am with an episode that's ready to go about a bill that's already dead. You know, I really thought that by outlining this and letting you know what was actually in it, that you'd be prepared to deal with all the lies that were coming, because, oh boy, were there lies. Even in the debate, there were so many lies being told about what was actually in this bill by the Republicans. And it got kind of funny at one point. Like here's one of them, all right? So the idea that the Democrats had, that I'm not a huge fan of, but what they wanted to do to deal with money in politics was create a 6-to-1 small donor matching system. So this is what's in H.R. 1. So the idea is, if you're running for Congress and you can raise $50,000 in $100 to $200 increments from 1,000 people, then you would qualify for this program that would give you $6 for every $1 that you raised in those small dollar donations. Now, the rules are that if you take that money, you wouldn't be able to take more than $1,000 from any single source, including from your own political party. So if you're a Democrat, you couldn't get showered with cash from the Democratic Party. It would be pretty much an even playing field because you couldn't take more than $1,000 from the party. And also candidates couldn't use more than 50 grand of their own money. So the thing is that this is a voluntary system. If you wanted to take the PAC money and have your party shower you with money because you're because you're loyal to the party instead of the country, I mean, you have that option. But this would be an option too. And the way that this would be funded, it would not be funded with taxpayer money. Instead, it would be funded by something called the Freedom from Influence Fund. And that would be funded by basically like fines on certain corporations and companies that break laws. Their money, their fines to the government would go into this pot, and then that would be used to fund our elections. But this is the type of stuff that was being said over and over and over again by Republicans. So here's one guy, Representative Rodney Davis. He's a Republican from Illinois. This was on Wednesday during the debate.
This is a bill that is going to cost the American taxpayers billions of dollars, creating a mandatory program that's going to line the campaign coffers of every single member of Congress with government money.
So 2 lies there. Like I said, this is voluntary. It's not mandatory at all. And it's not taxpayer money. And then, you know, here's Mike Bost, another Republican from Illinois during the same debate.
In fact, for every dollar contributed to a candidate, the American taxpayer will be forced to contribute 6. Now, let me say that again. For every dollar that is contributed to a candidate, an American taxpayer will be forced to contribute 6. You heard it right.
No, you didn't. And there were so many Republicans saying stuff like that. But you can repeat it as many times as you want. It doesn't make it true. And so here's the author of the bill. He apparently had enough. This is Representative John Sarbanes. He's from Maryland's 3rd District, which, by the way, in my live show, I showed the most gerrymandered district in the nation. And it's Maryland's 3rd, which I just find so ironic that the guy that wrote H.R. 1, which would really end the gerrymandering, or at least take very large, important steps towards ending gerrymandering. But the guy who wrote this bill is in the most ridiculously gerrymandered district in the country. I just found that fascinating. But regardless, here he is after all the lies saying this is taxpayer funded and it's mandatory. It's mandatory. Well, here he is on the House floor responding to the Republican lies.
I'm concerned that there's a collective delirium that seems to have infected part of this chamber. I keep hearing our colleagues on the other side say that the public financing system, the 6-to-1 matching system that we want to set up, is taxpayer funded. Hear this. It is not taxpayer funded. It is not taxpayer funded. It is not taxpayer funded. It is lawbreaker funded. We're setting up a fund called the Freedom from Influence Fund because we don't want the big money and the special interests to exercise influence in our campaigns anymore. And the Freedom of Influence Fund will be filled with dollars that come from putting a surcharge and assessment on people who break the law, corporations who've engaged in criminal activity or are subject to civil penalties, corporate malfeasance. That's where the dollars will come from. The people that are breaking the law, they're going to fund the Freedom from Influence account that will be there to match small donations. Now, let me tell you why it's so important that small donors be the ones that have the power. If you're a candidate and you got to raise money for your campaign, right now, in order to raise the money you need, you have to go to the deep pockets and the PACs and the lobbyists. And here's what happens. You start to think like the company you keep. So if you're hanging around with those folks, because that's where you're raising your money, you're going to start putting their priorities first, not the public's priorities. But if we have a 6-to-1 matching system funded by lawbreakers, not taxpayers.
I yield an additional minute.
The gentleman from Maryland, just suspend for just a moment. The gentleman from Maryland is allowed an additional minute.
If we have a matching system that gives power to small donors, now the candidate's going to say, if I want to raise money for my campaign and power my campaign, I'm going to go spend time with real people in my district. I'm going to go to a house party where somebody can give $25 or $50 and then that 6-to-1 match will come in and I can power my campaign. So instead of hanging out with the lobbyists on K Street or with the big money donors or with the PACs and the super PACs, I'm going to go spend time with people in my district. And they're going to tell me what their priorities are, and then I'm going to go to Washington and I'm going to fight for them. That's why we're creating this system.
Now, I didn't love the system that they're creating, the 6-to-1 match system, because it still leaves raising money as the heart of what we're doing in order to run for Congress. I don't love that. But at the same time, his logic isn't wrong. I mean, it's definitely better than what we have now. It would allow people to raise money without kissing Koch brother ass. You know, I like that. But what I like the most is that debate was happening. And that's the debate I thought we were going to have for 2 years. And instead, the Democrats shot their load on March 6th, 2 months into the new Congress. And this is already over. I just didn't see this coming. I didn't see that coming. So, you know, stupid me for having hope. And so now I'm sitting here and I have a whole show prepared of giving you all the details in this bill. And now I'm sitting here like, what's the point? Honestly, I don't want to waste your time or my breath, which obviously I'm already running out of. I think I'm going to end it here, guys, because HR1, it does important things, but it's not going to become law and we're not going to get the debate that I thought we were going to. So I honestly don't think this is worth our time. I really don't. What I do think is worth our time, though, is Represent.us and Wolfpack, because they are looking at these issues, including gerrymandering and ethics and campaign finance and the fact that there's like no rules applied to Congress. And actually, before we wrap this up, I think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, I mean, there's a reason why so many people like this chick. She, in one of the hearings, just really knocked it out of the park, showing the kind of problems that we have. So I want to play this for you in full. It was just so well done, the way that she structured this. But we have very real problems when it comes to how Congress functions. So here's her question and answer session. This is from February 6th in the House Committee on Oversight and Reform.
Let's play a game. Let's play a lightning round game. I'm going to be the bad guy, which I'm sure half the room would agree with anyway. And I want to get away with as much bad things as possible, ideally to enrich myself and advance my interest, even if that means putting my interest ahead of the American people. So, Mrs. Hobart Flynn. Oh, and by the way, I have enlisted all of you as my co-conspirators. So you're going to help me legally get away with all of this. So, Mrs. Hobart Flynn, I want to run. if I want to run a campaign that is entirely funded by corporate political action committees, is there anything that legally prevents me from doing that?
No.
Okay, so there's nothing stopping me from being entirely funded by corporate PACs, say from the fossil fuel industry, the healthcare industry, big pharma. I'm entirely 100% lobbyist PAC funded. Okay, so let's say I'm a really, really bad guy. And let's say I have some skeletons in my closet that I need to cover up so that I can get elected. Mr. Smith, is it true that you wrote this article, this opinion piece for the Washington Post entitled, "These payments to women were unseemly, that doesn't mean they were illegal"?
Well, I can't see the piece, but I wrote a piece under that headline in the Post, so I assume that's right.
Okay, great. So, green light for hush money. I can do all sorts of terrible things. It's totally legal right now for me to pay people off. And that is considered speech. That money is considered speech. So I use my special interest dark money funded campaign to pay off folks that I need to pay off and get elected. So now I'm elected, now I'm in. I've got the power to draft, lobby, and shape the laws that govern the United States of America. Fabulous. Now, is there any hard limit that I have, perhaps Mrs. Hobart Flynn, is there any hard limit that I have in terms of what legislation I'm allowed to touch? Are there any limits on the laws that I can write or influence, especially if I'm based on the special interest funds that I accepted to finance my campaign and get me elected in the first place?
There's no limit.
So there's none. So I can be totally funded by oil and gas. I can be totally funded by Big Pharma, come in, write Big Pharma laws, and there's no limits to that whatsoever.
That's right.
Okay, so awesome. Now, Mr. Mirabani, the last thing I want to do is get rich with as little work possible. That's really what I'm trying to do as the bad guy, right? So is there anything preventing me from holding stocks, say, in an oil or gas company, and then writing laws to deregulate that industry and cause, that could potentially cause the stock value to soar and accrue a lot of money in that time?
You could do that.
So I could do that. I could do that now with the way our current laws are set up. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so my last question is, or one of my last questions, I guess I'd say, is it possible that any elements of this story apply to our current government and our current public servants right now?
Yes.
Yes.
So we have a system that is fundamentally broken. We have these influences existing in this body, which means that these influences are here in this committee shaping the questions that are being asked of you all right now. Would you say that that's correct,
Yes.
Mr. Mirabani or Mr. Schaub?
Yes.
All right. So one last thing, Mr. Schaub. In relation to congressional oversight that we have, the limits that are placed on me as a congresswoman, compared to the executive branch and compared to, say, the President of the United States, would you say that Congress has the same sort of standard of accountability? Is there more teeth in that regulation in Congress on the president, or would you say it's about even or more so on the federal?
In terms of laws that apply to the president, yeah, there's just almost no laws at all that apply to the president.
So I'm being held, and every person in this body is being held to a higher ethical standard than the President of the United States.
That's right, because there are some ethics committee rules that apply to you.
And it's already super legal, as we've seen, for me to be a pretty bad guy. So it's even easier for the President of the United States to be one, I would assume.
That's right.
Thank you very much.
And HR 1 didn't even address a lot of those issues. I mean, people who have been listening a long, long time remember in 2013, during the Boston Marathon bombing, actually, when they gutted the Stock Act. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's talking here about, am I allowed to have stock in an oil and gas company and then come to Congress and write bills and laws that help the oil and gas company in a way that makes me more money? And they're like, yeah, you can do that. Well, there was a 60 Minutes special, I think it was in 2012 over the summer, where Nancy Pelosi and John Boehner in particular were highlighted for having stocks in companies that were going up based on laws that were being passed in Congress. And so this is one of the ways that people enter Congress, and they're normal people and they have, maybe $250,000 in the bank, and then they leave as multimillionaires, even though they're paid $174,000 a year. It's through their investments, because by being in Congress and making the laws, you obviously have insider info because you're making the laws, and you can make laws that help your own stocks. I mean, this is allowed. And so after that happened, they passed the Stock Act, which didn't exactly ban that practice, but it did make it transparent. So the people in Congress and their staffers were going to have to tell us on a publicly searchable website what stocks they own and what investments they have. And then exactly a year later, when it was supposed to go into effect, they gutted that website, made it no longer a thing that had to exist. And that was one of the first things I witnessed as the host of Congressional Dish that made me go, oh my God, this podcast is actually something that I need to do. And so we have these problems, and just watching the way the Democrats, this story went from being like, hey guys, I'm really excited about a bill that could solve a lot of problems, and like this strategy, which I think is brilliant and I'm thrilled to see. They switched the story so quickly to, oh my God, how fucking stupid are the Democrats? Because 2 months later, they've already voted on this bill. I can't even believe they did that. Now, maybe they might be breaking this up into smaller portions. Maybe that's one of the plans here. So maybe some of this stuff will come back. I don't know. But I think the way that we have to do it is what Represent.us and Wolfpack are trying to do, which is we have to go through the states. I'm sitting here right now, and I remember being on the stage too on Friday, where halfway through this, knowing that they'd already voted, and I was just going down all the details of this law, and I'm just like, why am I wasting these people's time? What am I doing here? I'm having the same exact feeling right now. Like, do I go through this law right now? And I honestly think no, because I don't want to. I'm not excited about it anymore. I'm really angry with the Democrats for being so dumb, because this really is an issue that is important. And the debate alone, I think, would help our country. And it's already over. I can't believe it's already over. So I apologize that I don't really have an episode for you right now. I'm sorry. I'm fever crazy. I'm just frustrated because I read a 600-page bill. I worked on this for 2 months, and here I am not knowing what the hell I'm doing. And I know this isn't a very good episode. I know it. I like to give you guys a lot of good information, but this is all I have right now. All I have right now is this bill, which is already dead. So basically what I'm going to leave you with is that 2020 is going to be a very important election, because this is where they're going to do the redistricting. I think that's the number one most important thing that I was most excited about when it came to HR1, when I saw it, is that instead of allowing politicians, or more specifically, members of the Republican and Democratic parties, to draw the lines on their maps, because in 2010, so the way that redistricting works, let's at least do this part of the show. The way that redistricting works is that every time we do a census, that changes. The census is when they count us. Okay. So they say that there's this many people in this state and this many people in this state. And every 10 years we do another count. And the congressional districts for the House of Representatives are done based on population. And so that changes the number of districts, which means the redistricting process has to happen. So the last time that this happened was in 2010, which makes the elections that happen in years that end in 0 the most important ones, especially on the state level, because those are the people in so many states that get to do the redistricting. Now, this has changed a little bit. Like in California, we now have independent commissions, but there are plenty of states left in this union that still allow politicians in the Democratic and Republican parties to draw their own lines. And the Republicans in particular in 2010 had something called Project Red Map, and you can still go to the website where they brag about the gerrymandering that they did. The website, I have this in the show notes for you, obviously, but it's called www.redistrictingmajorityproject.com. But it's called Red Map, and they purposely went after the state houses, knowing that if they could win those races, that they would get to draw the maps in a way that benefits the Republican Party. It was a strategy, and they brag about it. And they'll tell you about their successes, in particular in Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, for drawing the maps. And I feel like Pennsylvania is a really good example of what kind of success they had with this gerrymandering project that they did, because after they got to draw the maps in 2012, even though their voters are split about 50-50 between Republicans and Democrats, the Republicans got 13 out of 18 seats in the House, and the Democrats only had 5. So it was a 13-5 split. But after their map was declared clearly unconstitutional and they had to redo it, and actually they weren't allowed to redo it, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court is the one that did the new map. Well, after the Pennsylvania Supreme Court redid the map, the seats were split 50-50 after this latest election. So we now have 9 Republicans and 9 Democrats serving in the House of Representatives for the state of Pennsylvania. So it now much more closely reflects the will of the Pennsylvania electorate. And so that's a huge effect that this redistricting thing has. And our next census is coming up in 2020, which means that this upcoming election is the most important one. And so I think what we have to do is get these independent commissions, or an idea that's close to it, implemented on the state level, if your state hasn't done it already, as fast as we possibly can. Because, like I said, the Republicans, this is a strategy that they employ, but it's the Democrats that do it too. I mean, the Democrat that wrote H.R. 1 is in the most gerrymandered district. And then in Maryland, it's one of the states that's been gerrymandered by the Democrats. This is the number 2 guy in the Democratic Party in the House of Representatives. This is Steny Hoyer. And this is what he said on the House floor during the H.R. 1 debate.
First, it includes real national redistricting reform. I am for that. Ladies and gentlemen of this House, it may cost Maryland a seat. I get that. But it is the right thing to do to have a level playing field.
So members of both parties, they know what they're doing. This doesn't happen by accident. It's an actual strategy. And so we have to take that power away from them. That's probably the number one most important thing. Although automatic voter registration is really important too. But this is all stuff that can be done on the state level. And as we've seen here, we just can't trust the people in Congress to do it. You know, I mean, I saw such brilliance in the strategy of having the debate now, of crafting the bill now, despite the fact that it wasn't going to become law, but having a very well thought out bill at the end of this Congress that could just be sitting on the shelf for the next one, which is clearly not what happened here. You know, it passed one committee, the other 9, they just discharged it, which means they did nothing with it. They didn't go over the parts of the bill that their committees were in charge of. Most of the committees didn't have hearings. I'm just so deeply disappointed in what I just witnessed in the House of Representatives. And if you listen to the Democrats right now, they're so proud that they've passed H.R. 1. But they should be really ashamed of themselves, because the way that they did this was Republican light, which really explains the Democratic Party in general. Republican light. Because another hearing that I saw while getting dressed in my room at PodFest was a hearing, again, Elliot Abrams was testifying about Venezuela. And once again, all the Democrats are saying Maduro must go. Republican light. The only difference that the Democrats have, for the most part, when it comes to this Venezuela thing, is that they're saying, well, we don't want military intervention. All the other shit you're doing is perfectly fine. But no military intervention. Republican light. And the way that they're already governing the House of Representatives, Republican light. Because what I've witnessed over these last 6 years are bills that are just being rammed through so fast, not going through the regular process. And we just witnessed it again with their number one priority in a way that is not only the wrong way to govern, but also fucks them over politically. You know, they could have really used this as an opportunity and they just didn't. And so I'm mad at myself for having hope. I'm mad at myself on day one, jumping the gun, reading a 600-page bill, really for nothing, and really, I don't know. I wanted to have a better episode for you, and I apologize, I guess is what I'm saying. But we did learn something in the process, and I'm going to have to just change how I approach. I'm going to have to change how I approach this, because I don't understand why these people govern the way that they do. I think that this was a bad move on so many levels, strategy-wise and governing-wise. I don't know. The things that I've learned the most from in this Congress so far are the hearings, and there have been some good ones. And so I'm just going to focus on those from now on for the rest of this Congress, because I just have no hope right now that anything positive is going to, and that's really the thing. I was hoping that this was going to be a positive episode. That was my goal. It was like, hey, something good is happening. There's a strategy here that I can't wait to tell you about. And you guys know, if you've been listening to the last, 3 months of episodes, I was excited to tell you about this. And they just took every bit of wind out of my sails. So yeah, I'm clearly a little unstable today. I'm going to wrap up this episode. But yeah, we have to go through the states, and there's 2 organizations that are doing it. Again, Represent.us and Wolfpack. Check them out. Let's go around Congress, because we just can't trust these people to police themselves. So obviously, because you didn't get to hear it, the live show at PodFest was not a success. It just wasn't. But that's not the only time that I got to go up on the stage at PodFest. And in fact, the other time I was up on the stage was great. And so every time I start going back mentally and start to cry a little bit about how that live show went, I think about the other talk, which I got to do on the main stage, on the big stage, the keynote stage, which was about our honor system funding model that we're doing here on Congressional Dish. And every time I think of that day and that presentation, I smile, because it's one of the largest stages I've ever stepped on in my entire life, if not the largest. The crowd wasn't the largest. The largest was the keynote I did at PodFest 2 years ago. But it was just so cool to be on the main stage, and this one was legit. That was a big room. And I got to also tell people about something that I think we're doing here on Congressional Dish that's special. And that is a funding model that is not dependent on companies or advertising. Wasting your time is not something I ever want to do. So I'm not going to tell you to buy shit you don't need. And with this funding model, I don't have to. And I do feel like this is an experiment in seeing if we can do business as humans in a different way, by me providing you something of value technically for free, because you don't have to pay for this. Obviously, a lot of people don't. But the fact that people are, and we now have a sustainable business. I know we're not making Joe Rogan money right now, and there's a lot of podcasts that are financially doing better. I mean, that's for sure. But I'm proud of what we've built here, because we've done it in a way that I'm proud to be a part of, and because I am accountable to my listeners and my listeners alone. And when I go to these conferences and you hear about these different methods that people are discussing to please their advertisers, I'm proud that I am not only not worried about pleasing a single advertiser, but I am also in a position now to teach other podcasters to take the same route I am, where it isn't about advertisers and it's instead about you. And I got the opportunity to do that on a stage, a big stage at PodFest, and it went great. My talk was pretty basic. I've done it a few times now, but I went down all the different ways that it's possible to donate to this podcast, and told people, what the fee structure is and why I like some and I don't like the others. And I got a lot of really useful feedback, because I think that this business model, like the whole thing, hasn't even occurred to so many people in podcasting yet. So to get that feedback, I mean, I loved that part of PodFest. And the truth is that I never would have been asked to give that talk if you weren't contributing to this show and making this funding model possible. So, thank you. Because on bad days like this, I've got to tell you, there's moments where I'm just like, what am I doing this for? To work on an episode for 2 months and have to throw most of the content out the window. I mean, I talked to Lauren about it a couple minutes ago, because I've been crying. But I talked to Lauren about it, and she said, I did the research, and you never know, pieces of this bill might come back from the dead, and some of the research I did could be used in other episodes. She's not wrong. Maybe it's not all useless, but yeah, it sucks to read a 600-page bill and have all these details and then be like, what's the point? So I'm not feeling good right now. But then I go to the thank you list, and I see that you guys are contributing, and I see that I'm actually making a decent living here, and the money is a part of what's keeping me going. It would be a lie if I said that it wasn't, that I'm doing this all for altruistic reasons. Because over the past few years, there have been times where it's just like life was easier when I was a waitress. It was, I'm a good waitress. And if you get into a good restaurant, you can make good money. So, but the fact that you guys are thankful for this, and you're telling me you're thankful, and you're contributing when you could take all of my work for free, the fact that you're not, I've said this before, but it's keeping this show going. Without you paying for this show on the honor system, on the value for value system, which was invented by Adam Curry and John C. Dvorak. It's not mine, but I'm definitely mirroring what they've built. But this podcast, I don't know if it would still be going, because days like this are really, really rough, when I'm disappointed not only in my performance as a podcaster, but also just let down again by Congress. So, God damn it. I don't want to be crying on air like this all the time. You guys must think I'm nuts. You guys need to know I'm actually nuts. This is why I do the show notes, because I am a head case. You need to be checking the show notes. You need to be checking my work, because you're listening to a mental person, all this information. It's sad that I'm your source. But yeah, I'm disappointed, man. I'm really disappointed. But the one thing that keeps me going, and Lauren keeps telling me, when you get sad, look at the thank you list. And she's right. So thank you to all of the sustaining contributors, every single subscriber, some of you who have been subscribing now for 5.5 years. I'm just blown away by your support. Thank you, Ron Bonney, for physically breaking into Podfest in order to see that live show and then comforting me after. God, I don't want to have to re-record this thank yous, but I'm clearly a mess right now. But if you want to support this podcast and support my efforts to keep going, despite the never-ending cycle of disappointment, I would appreciate it if you would visit the Support the Show page on congressionaldish.com and help me out. Because I'm gonna go on a trip, and obviously I'm burned out and I need it. But I'm gonna go with my best friend to Mexico for 5 days, and I'm leaving less than 48 hours from this disaster of an episode. It's gonna be good for me. But when I get back, I need to get the green room up and going, because I really do want to be able to have all of my financial contributors be able to hear the bonus content and the golf swing free episodes. And I want to start having fun behind the paywall, where I can be a little bit more loose-lipped than I can here on the main feed. I think that will make this more fun, but on my end, it is more money. Paying for a second feed. The feed itself is $20 a month, plus I pay for the website, plus I'm going to have to pay for extra help to post everything places. I mean, it's not going to be free, but I think it might re-energize me again. I don't know, but it's coming. I swear to God, but I've been so focused on getting this live show, which, God damn it. But the green rooms, it's coming. Lauren and I were just talking about it. We're so close to being able to launch it. So we're hoping by the end of March. And I know I said I was hoping by the end of February, but it's a small operation here and we don't know what we're doing. So bear with us, but it is coming. So the green room's coming. You're going to have more Congressional Dish content coming soon. But to support these efforts, I really do need you guys to participate in the value for value model and pay, even though I'm not requiring to. I'm not putting up a paywall on the whole show, because why would I do that? But your voluntary payments, to keep me going, to keep the show going. And it is no exaggeration, because if no one was paying for this, I'm telling you, I would shut it down today. I'm in that kind of a mood. So yeah, let's get started with thanking the people who are making this possible. And up top, I'd like to thank Mike Coverdale. I usually start with subscriptions, which are people that are paying on a monthly or per episode basis. And I really do appreciate you guys. But Mike Coverdale, over the past month or so that he's been in my world, he's been sending in payments for old episodes and telling me why he's providing those payments. And he's been doing most of this on Venmo. And because I kind of use Venmo every once in a while in my personal life, I do get these dings, it goes ding, 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 ding. And right in the middle of me being upset this weekend, I got a ding, and it was from Mike Coverdale. And even on the thank yous here, I know this is stupid, but I kind of like the fact that the 5 payments for this thank you, he did 5 payments. One was 191 because that's how many episodes I had done at the time, which awesome. He also sent in a payment for 27, 54, 27, and 27, which adds up to $326. And 326 is my favorite number. I was born on March 26th. But when I had an AOL account, I was Jen 326. It's my number, 326. And so his payments added up to 326. So I don't know. There's just a lot of signs right now telling me that I need to thank Mike, especially because your support over this last month, like to have this new person in the community who's been generous and supportive. And I know you send a lot of emails, and I'll deal with my inbox probably tomorrow. I know it's well over 250 emails right now. I can't even fathom dealing with that. But Mike, I'm sure you have some emails in there, and I'll get back to you. But I appreciate you, and welcome to the community. You've made a difference. Let's just put it that way. And with his payments, he sent in a bunch of messages. So let's read his payment messages. So first, with the $191 payment, he said, "It was so interesting listening to this after watching the testimony." Oh, this was for the Elliot Abrams Venezuela episode, the last episode. He said, "It was so interesting listening to this after watching the testimony. I left work early and took a long walk on the beach while I listened." Oh, yeah, that's right. So Mike had watched the hearing on his own, and he sent me his notes on it, which were kind of duplicates of what I had done, but it was interesting how we had picked out a lot of the same moments. And so I was like, Mike, I think you're going to enjoy this. And so that is what he's responding to, because he already watched it, and then he watched had listened to my episode explaining, the putting all the dots together or whatever. And so that's what he's saying. Okay, so restarting the message. "It was so interesting listening to this after watching the testimony. I left work early and took a long walk on the beach while I listened. I'll email you a Zen video from the walk. Sounds like you needed it too. Thank you for all that you do." And his video is beautiful. He lives on the beach in Washington. And he sent me this one picture once where there was snow on the beach. And as a Southern California kid, and even up here in the Bay Area, we don't get snow on the beach. And so it was just so beautiful. It was like these two worlds colliding, that like, it just doesn't seem like you should see snow on the ocean, even though I know in like Cape Cod you do. But it's just not, I don't know, West Coast snow on the ocean is just not a thing that seems possible. But he sent me that picture. It was really cool. But yeah, I did enjoy that Zen video, and I think I also need a long walk on the beach. But yeah, thank you for that, Mike. And then Mike also said after a $27 payment, he said, "I just listened to Congressional Dish #1," which, oh boy. He said, "I was amazed at the relevance today of your research then. I sent you a short email when I was halfway in. Thank you for continuing to dredge through the muck for us." And I don't think I've seen that email yet, but I will. But yeah, God, it always scares me when you guys go back to the beginning, because I was so green back then. At one point during Podfest, I made a new friend. His name's June. He's a professional keynote speaker. And on the last day, I had already checked out of the hotel, but I had time to burn before going to the hotel. And so I chatted with him and a couple other people for hours. And when he asked me, why did I start doing Congressional Dish, I kind of told him the story from the beginning. And I said, well, my first idea was that I was going to read every bill in the House of Representatives before they voted on them, so we could know what's in them before they vote. And he let out like such a giant belly laugh at that idea, like when I started this, just how naive I was, and looking at what just happened and the assumptions that I made about HR1. It's just how naive I still am. It's been 6.5 years, and I still think that this Congress is going to function the way that it's supposed to in my naive head. It's just, I've come so far, and yet I haven't. And yet someone just listened to Congressional Dish #1, and they're still relevant. So I'm happy to hear that my work is still holding up after all these years, and that it was good to begin with, because I haven't listened to those episodes since I put them out. So I'm a little scared when y'all tell me that you listen to the old ones, because I don't even know what's in them. But yeah, I'm glad that you appreciated it. Thanks, Mike. And then, okay, so the next payment was $54, and he said, "I've shared episode 3 with over 30 groups." Episode 3 was about freedom for the markets and what I think that actually is, not the economic theory, but the actual practice of deregulation being the goal of our entire economic system of letting businesses essentially be free. I think that's what free market essentially is code word for. And so that was the background that I had already had on that whole theory. Because I was like, as I go forward, this is an idea that's kind of in my head, put there largely by the shock doctrine by Naomi Klein. And I did an episode about it. And to this day, it's an episode a lot of people still listen to. And so that's what he shared with over 30 groups. And so thank you for being not only a financial supporter, but of sharing this podcast with other people, because I've also made a decision to save money, which is that I'm done with social media. I don't see the point. The show got to be as big as it already is because you were sharing it with people. And I spent a year, traveling around the country trying to be on other people's podcasts. And I was paying a lot of money for social media posts that weren't really getting shared. And I didn't really know why I was doing it. And I'm just doing things because I think I'm supposed to. And, fuck that. You guys are a great marketing department. And I'm going to go back to just leaning 100% on you to share this show if you like it. And if you don't like it, well, then maybe I'll just pack it up and quit because if you're not sharing it, then you're not sharing it and it must not be good. So Mike, episode 3 with over 30 groups. That's fantastic. Thank you for doing it. He also said, I feel it is a well-documented primer for ages 17 to 71 about how our corporate-sponsored government has destroyed nations for many decades. I had no idea. And that's why I did that episode, because I had no idea too. And my horizons are still being expanded all the time with this new information. I mean, episode 191, the last episode with Nicaragua and Guatemala and El Salvador, I didn't know that history. And there's always new countries being added to the list. It's incredible. So I'm glad you like that episode. I did too, but I feel like my work in the past 6.5 years is only built on it. So I think you're going to enjoy what's coming as you go forward. And then his last payment was for $27. And he said, I just listened to Congressional Dish 154 on healthcare. Great information. Thank you for your hard work then and now. You're very welcome. And the healthcare stuff. Yeah, that is one good thing about the House of Representatives being controlled by the Democrats is that the Republicans are not going to be able to chip away at the rules we do have in place on insurance companies as easily as they were in the 115th Congress. And that's one bullet that I feel like we really dodged were those bills that I was reading in the 117th, or not the 117th, guys. I am so tired. What was it called? The 115th Congress in 2017. That's what I'm trying to say. But in that year, I did a bunch of episodes on what the Republicans were trying to do. And it was basically allowing the insurance companies to do whatever the fuck they wanted with our premiums. Like take our premiums and give us back as little healthcare as possible. That is what makes a profitable insurance company. And that's what the Republicans are trying to help them do. And I keep saying the Republicans. I know a lot of you love that I get mad at both parties, but sometimes you just got to call a spade a spade. And when it comes to the party that is 100% completely controlled by business interests, it's the Republican Party. It just is. And there's no better example of that than the American Health Care Act and all of their attempts to destroy the few rules we have on what insurance companies can and cannot do. I mean, it was just revolting. And so I've been following that now for 6.5 years, this healthcare debacle. So I appreciate that you appreciate that work because it's also pretty complicated. Reading the Affordable Care Act, it took me an entire week to do, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done to this day. There's no other bill that's been harder. So that 154, that sounds too recent. The Affordable Care Act episode, that was back during the 2013 government shutdown, which was shut down because the Republicans were trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act, which basically still allowed the insurance companies to stay the center of our system, but just put rules in place. It was Republican light. So yeah, but the fact that they're so opposed to any rules being placed on what insurance companies can or cannot do, there's no better example of the Republican Party being there for business and not for us. There's no better example than that because there's so many of us that still go bankrupt because of healthcare. In fact, if I'm being honest about it, it's why I'm not at the doctor right now because I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that I'm probably going to be fine. But I don't want to go to the doctor to just check because I have no idea what kind of costs are going to come raining down if I go to the doctor. So I avoid the doctor as much as I can, not because I'm afraid of doctors, but because I'm afraid of the bills. I'm afraid of what the insurance companies won't pay for. And so that's why I haven't gone to the doctors. I'm just drinking a lot of fluids and hoping. And if I have some kind of cancer right now, I'm not going to know about it. I'm one of those people that's going to be like, well, she should have gone to the doctor. Well, now you know why I didn't. And I don't think I have cancer, although who knows? Because I don't go to the doctor. But anyway, thank you, Mike Coverdale. I'm really happy to have you on the Congressional Dish team. You've made a difference to my psyche in these past few weeks. But now I'd like to thank the people who have signed up for sustaining donations, contributing either by episode or by month on a regular basis. And the largest new contributor is a PayPal contributor, and this is actually a raise. This is Emerson Trimble, who is contributing now $15 a month, which is a raise from $5 a month. And the email attached to this raise said, "Hey, Jen, on a recent trip, I lost the card attached to my Patreon account, causing my $5 per episode donation to lapse. Being lazy, I have allowed this to go on for several weeks. The guilt I have been experiencing is real. I've decided to move the donation to PayPal, and as I've received a raise, figured you should too. Thank you and congratulations. The show has been truly outstanding. Thank you so much for the incredible work that you're doing and to the other producers helping make it happen. Regards, Emerson Trimble." Thank you. And thank you for thanking the other producers. I mean, we really are in this podcast together. We are also now we got a raise. This is on Patreon. This is from $5 an episode to $6 from Jamie Langoff. Thank you, Jamie. We also are now getting $5 an episode on Patreon from Wesley Wright, who also contributed a $20 Venmo payment on top of that for episode 176. And I don't remember which one that was, but I'm really glad that you enjoyed it. Also and thank you, Wesley. Also on Patreon, we got a raise from $3 an episode to $5 from Andrew N., who sent in a message, said, "Jennifer, first off, you're an invaluable resource and you're awesome." Well, thank you. I don't feel so awesome today, but I'm glad you say so. So I'm finally going through and listening to your past and latest Venezuela episodes, and I'm really enjoying the deep dive on a topic I've heard so much propaganda about over the last few months, but have been borderline criminally underinformed about. That said, I'm arguing with vehemently pro-business neoliberals and MAGA chuds at the moment who keep repeating the same talking points that this administration does, utterly ignoring the U.S.'s own role throughout the Latin American countries over the last few decades, and insisting that our current interests are entirely humanitarian. And I could use a few links to source material about some of the things you brought up. Do you have any show notes available? Oh, honey, of course I do. Go to congressionaldish.com. And this is one of the most important things that I do. And I apologize that you didn't know this, but on all of the episodes, I give you links to all of the sources. So go to Congressional Dish 191 and 190 on congressionaldish.com, and you will have articles for days. I mean, that's one of the things. I got an enormous virtual assistant bill for February because of the Venezuela episodes. There are so many links and sources in there because I know the propaganda is strong with this one. So if there was anything that backed up what I was saying, even if there were 5 articles, I threw them in the show notes to give you as much as I possibly could to tell you where I was getting this stuff from. So yes, there are so many show notes available, and that's exactly what people use them for. To get in these conversations with people that just listen to what they hear in corporate media and accept it as truth, which honestly, you can't get mad at them for doing. Why would people think that the news is lying to them? You know, it's the news. Their job is to tell you what's going on in the world. And it was a shock to me when I found out that I was getting purposefully misinformed by millionaires, paid by billionaires and corporate sponsors. Every single one of those advertisers on the corporate news is a corporate sponsor. And so when you see ads for Raytheon and Boeing, I mean, are you going to buy a fucking jet? I say this all the time, but Boeing is not advertising on CNN for you. That is Boeing giving CNN money. Why do they do that? Well, they don't want those reporters to bite the hands that feed them. And so Boeing feeds them. Raytheon feeds them. Northrop feeds them. These are all war things manufacturers. And so I don't know these journalists that are on the television. I don't know them personally. I've met exactly none of them, except for Governor Jesse Ventura. I've met him. He's the only one. But all the other ones, I don't know what their personal motivations are. But I do know that there's certain stories that they don't go into because they don't want to upset their advertisers. And War Department contractors are their advertisers. But until you understand that dynamic, until someone explains it to you, until someone explained it to me, I mean, really, like Randy Rhoads explained this to me, and Tom Hartman explained this to me, and Naomi Klein, in a way, explained this to me. And there's been so many people, but it's taken 15 years. You know, I wasn't paying attention at all in 2003 when we started the Iraq War. And now I understand this, but it took a lot of people helping me understand it. But if you're just someone who's just watching the news, you don't think it's lies, so you can't get mad. But what you can do is exactly what you're trying to do, is show people through sources, this is where I'm getting it from, and let them judge the sources for themselves. You know, like fighting with people is always ineffective. You have to let people make their own conclusions, and all you can do is feed them information. You know, like this is why, like, I'm afraid almost to get into the punditry world, because it all seems based on fighting, and that's not something that I'm interested in doing. I'd rather compare sources and figure it out together, and that's not something that is incentivized on corporate media. It's just, I don't even know if I want to get involved, even if that keeps my show smaller than it could be. It's just not a world I want to be in. I want to be in a world where we do stuff like this, where we share notes. It's like, oh, I don't know if this information is true. Here's an article that might go against something that you said, Jen. I love it when people send me friendly emails that goes, hey, here's some more information to add to what you already know that might contradict something, because we're all living in an era where we are surrounded by bullshit. And the saddest part is that the people that are trusted the most, the people that rise to the top of journalism, the people that get on TV and make the millions, in a lot of cases, they're the ones doing the worst jobs of informing us. It's an absolute shame. And you don't know where they're getting their information from. So the least I can do is give you mine. So yes, every single episode of Congressional Dish has detailed show notes. These sound clips I play for you, I always give you the sources. And most of the time I'm able to give you the timestamps. Sometimes I just forget, or I don't know. Sometimes I just forget. But most of the time the timestamps are in there so that you can see the clip for yourself in context. Because I have to edit them, because we don't need this show to be 8 hours long. What would be the point of me watching hearings for you if I just played the whole thing? So, the show notes, guys, they're so important. And I pay a lot of money to make those happen. So your contributions are making those show notes happen. Like I said, like there's nothing that I do I can't do without you. So yes, they're your show notes. You're paying for them, Andrew. Please use them and win those arguments in a friendly way. No fighting. But back to Andrew's note, he said, thanks in advance. Love what you do. Keep up the great, highly informative, and exceedingly underrated podcasting. Thank you very much, Andrew. We are also now getting $5 an episode on Patreon from each of these people. Nathan Williamson, Jose Garcia, Trisha Alvarado, Matt Corda, Bill Renenke, and Diego Fajardo. So thank you to each of you for contributing to this show. We also have some new PayPal subscribers at the $10 a month level. So I'd like to thank Elizabeth Hood, Wagner Braga, and Resale Store. Thank you all for contributing. We also are now getting an anonymous $10 a month from someone who sent in an email. Dear Jen, I just listened to your podcast for the first time. God. And this is another reason, you guys, why it's so important for you guys to share the show, because this person is now contributing $10 a month and listened for the first time. So you never know which one of your friends is going to jump in and help this community on a financial level and help it keep going. Like, God, I love these people the first time and they're already contributing. You guys give me so much hope. But back to the note, said, you are a dream come true. I am so appreciative of the hard work of you and your team to provide balanced and factual information about the world we live in. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you for supporting it. And God, these thank yous, they keep me going, guys. They really do. Okay, I'm having trouble breathing, so I need to wrap this up soon. Let's see. We also are now getting $7 a month. This is a paper check, I believe, from Edward Sitchin of Buffalo, New York. Whew, sounds cold. And this is a raise from 5 to 7. And Edward said, hi, Jen. Hopefully this goes through. I'm giving you a bit of a raise because you're just fantastic. Thank you. Thanks for everything you do and keep up the incredibly important work. Well, thank you for supporting it. We are also now getting $5 a month from Richard Weil. Thank you, Richard. We are getting $2 an episode on Patreon from Rust Belt STEM, and this is a raise from 150 to 2. So thank you, Rust Belt STEM. We also got a raise also from 150 to 2 from Megan Hartman. So thank you, Megan. And on Zelle, we got $2. We're getting $2 a month now from Clifford Kang. And he said, I want to do more after finally getting a job, but half my income has been going to student debt. But this is my monthly commitment. And Cliff, thank you. You guys, I say this all the time, but this is a crowdfunding thing. Pay what you can, but just pay more than zero. And I'm a happy camper. If everybody who paid for this show or everyone who downloaded the show paid even $1, we'd be in real good shape, you know? So yeah, thank you, darling. I appreciate you. And also on Patreon, we are now getting $1 an episode from Noel Miranda. And Noel Miranda is now able to listen to the golf swing free version of Congressional Dish. And, oh shit, there's more. I'm really happy about the contributions, but I'm having trouble talking. So let's get through this. We also got, so these are one-time contributions. These come in whenever people feel like it. And so we got a $100 check from James Elmer of Cape Canaveral, Florida, where the rockets fly. So thank you, James. We also got $100 on PayPal from Christopher Donahue. Thank you, Chris. We got $50 on Zelle from Tara Poleski, and the message said, because you rock. Well, thank you, girl. We also got $25 on PayPal from Joel Worrell, who said, for your reference to Tony Romo in the Venezuela episode. Love it. I think what I said, oh yeah, because my first Venezuela episode was like last summer, maybe 2 summers ago. I can't even remember, but it was before the coup like really got ramped up. And so I called myself the Tony Romo of regime changes, I believe, because Tony Romo is now a commentator for NFL football and he calls plays before they're even going to happen. So he's like a wizard in that way. And so I was basically calling myself awesome by comparing myself to Tony Romo. And then I got paid for it. Like, God bless podcasting. We also got a $25 gift card for Amazon from Andrew, and Andrew sent a message in with it. He said, greetings and salutations, Jen. Andrew from Virginia again. Just a quick note that I was able to send another gift card your way. And by the way, Abby thanks you for her food. Abby is my dog. Back to his note, he said, I know it isn't as dependable as a monthly subscription, but I am glad it can help out. I also have a reply to one of the listeners from a couple episodes ago. They asked what are good episodes to start on, and I agree with your answer that you should check out what looks interesting. But on the other hand, I also have a list of ones I think stand out a bit. I may have missed a few in late 2016, 2017. The closer I get to that election, the more I dread listening, the more I dread talking. But these are the ones I feel should be called out. Feel free to read them, edit the list, or just ignore it. Hope you had fun in Vegas and keep up the good work, Andrew. And I'm going to read his opinion on what the best episodes are because he deserves to be heard. So the episodes he thinks are worth listening to include episode 3, which I just told you about, which I titled The Free Market versus Us. Also number 12. Oh, yeah, I forgot I did that episode. Episode 12 was about ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, I think is what the C stands for. But basically, it's this group of world traders, you know, the economic system that we're trying to push upon the entire world, the one that privatizes everything and makes it so that we work for as little as possible and have no government support if possible, you know, just destroys the social safety network. Well, ALEC is a group of people devoted to making that the global economic system, and they are writing bills that are passed at the state level. Like they're literally writing bills, giving it to people in state congresses, and those are becoming law. And so ALEC is a very creepy thing. And so I did a whole episode about it, apparently in February 2013, and I forgot. So yeah, he liked that episode. Maybe you will too. There was also, same month, February 2013, an episode on private airport security. There's also episode 25, which was on CISPA. Actually, I don't recommend listening to that episode because that didn't become law. There are ones later that are better, but that one didn't. Actually, listen to whatever the fuck you want to. I don't care. But just know that if you go for that episode, it didn't become law. There's also episode 28 called The IRS Scandal. And I think the better episode to listen to about the IRS scandal is the impeachment of John Koskinen, which I want to say, you know what? I have it right here. I'll look it up. And I actually put the link to this one specifically in the show notes because in the live show that went to I did mention this. Episode 129, the impeachment of John Koskinen. That is the story, the full story of the IRS scandal, which was bullshit. There was no IRS scandal. They were not targeting conservative organizations. It was the IRS doing their job and investigating dark money organizations, which are being disguised as social welfare organizations. So honestly, that's one of the best episodes I've ever done. Episode 129. It's so important. Listen to that. There's also episode 41, Why Attack Syria, another one that is worth your time. And then he says any of the TPP episodes. So there were 4 of them, according to Andrew. But yeah, that also we are not a part of, but just for you to understand what is happening with these international trade agreements, I do think that is worth your time, because the TPP is the Trans-Pacific Partnership. That's what the Obama administration was negotiating. And it's an expansion of the world trade system, this economic system where we are the help, and it exists to help multinationals make money, really. And so this just gives you details on how it's done and what exactly they're getting into law on an international level. So I was fascinated by that whole rabbit hole. You know what? Andrew recommends a bill here that is now officially outdated. So I think you know what? Fuck it. You can listen to it, but just know that this is expired and there's been a new one since, but that's episode 61, the Farm Bill. That's where I really learned about crop insurance, and that system still exists. So even though, be careful with the details. Like I said, there is a new version of the Farm Bill that was created by the last Congress. That will teach you a lot about the crop insurance system. And I think there's information worth knowing in there. So Andrew's right. Listen to that. Oh, this is a fun one. Episode 66, A Hunter's Point of View, is a conversation with a friend of mine. He is the host of Day One Outdoors, which is a show up in the Pacific Northwest. And Cody's like a friend on the level, like in my wedding. And I'm someone who's terrified of guns. I don't want them in my house or anywhere near me. Cody is a hunter. And so I don't want to say that we disagree, but in talking to Cody, I get to understand better why people like their guns. I got to talk to an actual hunter about a bill that was being written at the time, and he helped me see some things in a different way. So it's just an interesting conversation, and I think it's cool that it's one of Andrew's favorites. Also, the episodes that come after that, episodes 67 and 68 are about Ukraine. That's one of the rabbit holes that I do think is essential to understanding now. A lot of the things that I talk about, that Ukraine rabbit hole was real. Then there's the Amtrak episode. I loved that one too, episode number 73. There's the interview I did with Jack Abramoff for my 100th episode. That episode was a trip. And Jack Abramoff on Skype wished me happy birthday after that. So it's like, I've become friendly with Jack Abramoff. And actually, he's a really nice dude, which is probably why he was able to become an effective lobbyist, because I don't know how you don't kind of like the guy. I kind of like the guy. So yeah, you can hear my conversation with Jack. Episode 105, I did just for fun. It was about the anthrax attacks, and I loved it. So yeah, listen to anthrax. That's a good one. There's episode 163 about net neutrality. And then he also recommends 182 about Justice Kavanaugh. And then he adds to that, or pretty much any episode from 2018. And I do think that the essential episodes are the ones that are for your current Congress. And so we're really just getting started with the current Congress now with this disappointment with HR 1. But yeah, I have done a lot, haven't I? Wow. But yeah, thank you for the list, Andrew. I'm always fascinated to see what your favorite episodes are, because I've got to admit, there's a few on here that I wouldn't have picked. So thanks. That was informative to me, as well as I think to some of the other listeners. All right. We also got a check for 2222. Lauren thinks that it's a bonus from Alex Beatty from Houston, Texas. And this is on top of his 1111 month subscription. And for those of you that don't know, 1111 is a lucky number. And if you notice that it's 11:11, either AM or PM, you're supposed to kiss the clock for good luck. I know it's stupid, but it also can't hurt. So I actually do that. So I like the 11:11 contributions too. I think we only have like 2 of them. We also got $20. This was a check from Sir Paul from Horseheads. And his letter said, Jen, Congressional Dish 189 First Step Prison Reform was such a quality product that I had to send an unscheduled check. I have a question about your workflow. Do you have an easy way to study bills that are written as changes to existing law? Fictional example. Section 123 of 2 U.S. Code 7 shall be amended in paragraph 3, sentence 2 by striking the word thus and adding the following text, except when prohibited by. Thanks, Sir Paul from Horseheads. No, it's not easy. And so basically what I do is I look up the US code and I see what the text used to be or currently is, and I compare the two. And sometimes, like, let's say it's something that's already become law, a lot of times that'll be updated. So if I go to that code, it's already updated and it's exactly the same. I hope this is making any sense. But I can also go back to previous versions of the law. So sometimes I have to search for the PDF version of what the law used to be in order to find out what change was made. I mean, it's the hardest part of my job, which is why I say, like, you can't really judge a bill by its page numbers. In a lot of ways, HR 1 was long, and it took me 3 straight days. And if you look in the show notes, I didn't even outline every single portion of it, but it wasn't the hardest bill because it wasn't amending a lot of current laws. So it was kind of straightforward. There are some bills that are 4 pages of mumbo jumbo of the section 123 of 2 USC shall be amended in this paragraph, this sentence by striking this word and adding this. Like, that is the hardest stuff. And sometimes that's all a bill is. So a page number really doesn't tell me how much work I have ahead of me. There is one tool that makes looking at different versions of current bills easier, and that's GovTrack. So you can check out, like, the first version of HR 1 versus what passed the House. So if I wanted to compare for whatever reason, like let's say HR 1 had a chance, if I wanted to compare the introduced version, which is what I read, to what actually was passed, the one that might have 72 amendments attached to it, probably doesn't. I bet a bunch of them were struck down, but the bill was amended in between the time I read it and the time it passed the House. What GovTrack does is it highlights the changes in red. So that's really useful. And I guess you could apply that and use that for previous laws. But no, most of the time I'm looking up the law and seeing what changes it. And it's not easy. I wish I had a better answer for you. The only tool is the GovTrack tool, which is useful. But yeah, this is why I do this stuff for you. And this is why you pay me, because it's hard work. It really is. But thank you, Sir Paul from Horseheads, in the morning to you, my friend. I also got $20 on Zelle from Alan Jurinsky. So thank you, Alan. We got $15 on Zelle from Stacy Tibbetts. So thank you, Stacy. We also got a $10 check from Jeffrey Pachenko from Libertyville, Illinois. That is a patriotic city. So thank you, Jeffrey. We got $10 on Venmo from Mike Cretella, who said, great episode. Thank you, Mike, for contributing again. We also got another payment, $5 from Michelle Molina. Thank you, Michelle. And last, the only Cash App of the episode was Brianna Ray, who said it was $5 for your huge amount of time devoted to educating us. And, you know, Lauren added 2 notes on here that I think are really useful, but I have run out of gas and I'm running out of breath. So I'm going to wrap it up for the day. I would like to thank Daryl in particular at Pro Podcast Solutions. He was at PodFest. He did everything he could to make that live PodFest a success. And, you know, the forces that be at the Wyndham just weren't helping us. But I do appreciate you, Daryl. And I love your entire company. And if you guys are looking for editing, I've been happy with Pro Podcast Solutions for more years than I can keep track of. I honestly don't even know how long we've been working together now. So thank you, Daryl, Karen, Mike, the editor. I love working with you, and Carrie, Daryl's wife. I mean, your entire team. I appreciate you all. I'd also like to thank Jess Hershey, jesshershey.com. She's the VA. Brian, Only Child Imaginations, does all the artwork. And he actually titled this episode back when the live show was going to be the show. I don't know if we're going to keep that. I don't know. I don't know how to do this. But Brian, you're the best. And he runs the Congressional Dish store. So go and buy some merchandise, support the show, be our walking billboards. Oh, and that's the other thing too. Ron Bonney, when he came to the show, he was wearing a Congressional Dish sweatshirt, and it actually looked really cool. So Ron is walking around as my Orlando billboard, and I love it. I think it's the coolest thing. I'd also like to thank my sister Lauren and Joe and my dad and Ryan Delisle, because I didn't know what to do about this episode after it didn't go well, and they are my conscience. And so, you know, thank you guys. The 4 of you really are my best friends, and yeah, I wouldn't be doing this without you, and I just love you. And yeah, so the next episode, it's going to be on one of the hearings that I watched to and from Mexico. There's been a lot of good ones, a lot of good ones. I already have a list of 27 that I want to watch. And so in the upcoming episodes, we're going to get more into the hearings because they're fascinating. They're really, really fascinating. So I'm going to take a slightly different direction from here on forward. I'm hoping to do more episodes, and I don't know, but right now I just need to walk away for a week and sit in the sun with my bestie. I'm going with Ryan. So yeah, again, thank you guys for supporting the show. And I'm feeling better now that I've done the thank yous. They never fail to make me feel better. So I love you all, each and every one of you. Thank you very much. And I will talk to you before the end of March. Thanks. Bye.
We're surrounded now by liars coming at us through our TV screens.
We don't have a domestic spying program.
They're content to fight in black and white despite the many in-betweens. We got a president who plays with the facts. And then he waves a flag to cover his tracks. As if a lie is alright, if the end will justify the means. Now we are so damn tired of being lied to.
The polar ice caps aren't going away.
We don't think we can deny it anymore. You can stick to your story if you think it flies. But we're not keeping quiet anymore. We are so damn tired of being lied to.
Government jobs consume the profits of the private sector.
We don't think we can deny it anymore. You can stick to your story if you think it flies. But we're not keeping quiet anymore. Now we're not keeping quiet.
These bills represent common sense, bipartisan solutions that actually solve problems.